Let's go down nature's staircase here and let's talk about Dylan Rounds, the disappearance of 19-year-old farmer from Lucin, Utah. Got a few videos on Dylan now, and there is some interesting and potentially disturbing information that's come out that I want to share with you. 19-year-old farmer Dylan Rounds was last seen in person on May 26th, and that was at the Saddle Sore Bar in Montello, which is about 27 miles away from his farm in Lucin, Utah. It's over the border, over the state line in Nevada. And it's Montello that this disturbing information comes from. Dylan was alive and well on the 28th of May. He spoke to his grandma early that morning, around 6:51. Wanted to get his grain in the ground before it rained. And then his phone pinged in a 15-mile kind of vicinity, which would have included the farm, sometime in the afternoon, around 3:40 in the afternoon. Doesn't mean that Dylan was there, but it means his phone was there. But he was alive and well on Saturday morning, May 28th, and then he's never been heard from again. His family tried to contact him. They got two people who work on that farm, one of whom Dylan had fired. There's a guy called Don and a guy called Jim, who were asked by the grandmother to go and check out whether Dylan was there. This was on the Sunday. It's unclear whether they actually went to check. They said they did. Then on May 30th, the family went over to Lucin, Utah to start the search. They knew something was wrong. And Dylan's mother, Candice Cooley, has been on numerous YouTube channels now, and she's talked about how bad the investigation's been. The Box Elder County Sheriff's Office, who are the leading agency in this, have not been terribly helpful. She's kicked up a lot of fuss. Box Elder County Sheriff's Office released a statement a couple of days ago about the amount of agencies that have actually been involved. The family of Dylan released a counter statement. So there's bad blood between Box Elder County sheriffs and the family. I can understand why, because they didn't process the place as a crime scene. They didn't process the truck that was there. They found Dylan's pickup truck that looks like it had been power washed. They found Dylan's boots, which look like they've got a speck of blood on them. We don't know whether it's blood, but these things weren't processed. Law enforcement took the boots, but then they just basically sat on them for ages, days and days and days, before they sent them to the lab for processing. And the truck, they allowed the family to take the truck home. So Candice, Dylan's mother, argues that a whole lot of important evidence has been lost. And I think she's right, I do. Now, this farm, this land that Dylan was farming, he'd been there for his third season there, the first year that he's able to grow a crop there. It was his grandparents that bought this land for Dylan, allegedly. And the grandmother is the last person to actually speak to Dylan. So they're very closely kind of connected in his life. A 19-year-old kid out there practically on his own in the desert. Yeah, I can understand why the family would want to keep in very close contact with him. But he's 19, he's an adult, and he's not going to tell his family everything that's going on in his life. He's going to want some privacy. And we know he's not told the complete truth. He told his mother that he didn't give chase. This guy who does have an alibi, was hours away. The mother even says the timeline doesn't fit for chase. He lied to his mother and said he didn't give chase a lift when witnesses say that he did. But who were all these witnesses who were coming out talking is the interesting thing. This farm is in the desert, in the middle of nowhere. But it's Montello, the place where Dylan goes to socialise, that's central to this story. Because it's there where these dodgy characters that I think are very intimately connected to this story that they live. Now on Zavgirl the other day, a private investigator called Jim came on, and he was very blunt and very, very outspoken about what's been going on in Dylan's life. And that Dylan's mother is perhaps, you know, she's a mama bear, she's angry, she's got a right to be, but he says she's not accepting the complete truth, and Dylan has been lying, or at least withholding information about his life. Now he's an adult, he's entitled to a private life. But this private investigator says that various eyewitnesses to, you know, Dylan's life in the months up to his disappearance have said that he was actually in a relationship of sorts with Kurt, who's the owner of the Saddle Sore Bar. Now Candice Cooley says that this Kurt guy, the owner of the Saddle Sore Bar, told her that Dylan was being held, and she told law enforcement, and it seemed that interested. But the private investigator, Jim, also brings up Kurt, also brings up his RSO brother, Troy. And according to this Jim, Troy is in the habit of kidnapping young girls. But the girls that he's kidnapped and held in a shed were too scared to testify against him. But he's on the RSO register for something else. So these two, and they're older, they're like in their 60s, Kurt and Troy, they kind of like police this area, if you will. And Dylan has been associating with them. Dylan's mother says that he stays in Montello. He stays in a trailer in Montello. So is this Kurt's trailer? But what Jim says is that Candice doesn't want to accept that Dylan was in some kind of relationship with this guy. Now, Dylan's private life is only of concern to the investigators of this story, because these are the people who possibly were last to see him. And certainly Kurt is on Candice's radar. Now, I said in a video the other day that why aren't they taking these people in for questioning? Why aren't they interrogating them? Why aren't they giving them lie detector tests? And I'm really glad that Jim said the same thing. Take this Kurt guy in for questioning, interrogate him, offer him a lie detector test, ask him for his phone, and see what's on there. Now, the private investigator said that, well, maybe there was an accidental discharge of a weapon in the pickup truck, because allegedly, according to these eyewitnesses who've seen Dylan around and about in Montello, he was riding out and about with Kurt and Troy, doing this kind of, I don't know, policing of the area. So could there have been a tragic accident and Dylan was shot accidentally? Could it be something more nefarious, like Dylan being held? Or did Kurt just say that because he wanted to throw the heat off himself? And this Jim says that law enforcement are scared to investigate these people. So, I don't know, is that the reason why Box Elder have perhaps been dragging their feet in some instances? They don't want to unearth all this stuff, they want to leave it alone. Now, the other thing that's been talked about, and this is weird, is that a month before Dylan disappeared, you know, exactly a month, on April 27th, another 19-year-old young man disappeared in Nevada. He looks like Dylan Round's twin, you've got to admit. But this guy is from California. Now, I can't find out why he was headed allegedly to Utah. I think his mother, Aidan's mother, his name is Aidan Clune, I think his mother is going to be doing an interview with Sleuth Mom, maybe today. It's come up in my suggesteds anyway. So maybe we'll find out more, because so few people actually know about Aidan's disappearance. But he disappeared from Elko County, which is an agency who are involved in Dylan's disappearance, because Montello is in Elko County. So people kind of putting two and two together. Even the private investigator, Jim, is putting two and two together and saying, are these two young men who look like twins, both 19, going missing? And Elko County is like this central area where these disappearances have occurred. I don't know. I can't answer. What I can say, though, is just be careful in putting two cases together, two very unusual cases together. You know, people say there's no such thing as coincidences, but look at what happened with Brian Laundrie and Kylan and Crystal's murder. You know, people said, how can Brian be there in Moab, have that DV incident with Gabby on the 12th of August, and then just a few days later, Kylan and Crystal are murdered? And hey presto, Brian Laundrie, who eventually murdered Gabby a few days after this, how come nothing ever happens in Moab? How can you have Brian Laundrie rocking up into town, leaving and murdering Gabby Petito in Wyoming, leaving Kylan and Crystal murdered in Moab? Well, it turns out, as I said all along, there's no connection here. This is just a complete coincidence. So just bear that in mind with the Dylan and Aidan cases. It's an understandable thing that people do, is two unusual occurrences, they create an illusory correlation, that these are just two unusual occurrences, completely coincidental. I agree, it's really strange. It's really strange. But Dylan's disappearance and Aidan's disappearance do appear to be quite different. So Aidan spent the night in Wells, which is shortly under an hour away from Montello. And then it appears that he travelled south because his vehicle was found on the highway near Curry, which is a tiny place out there in the desert in Nevada. I mean, a tiny place. He took his phone with him, but he left everything else in the vehicle. And allegedly, the police think he had some kind of like mental health break. They're now kind of considering this a recovery mission. But the way he travelled south and then disappeared, he's took himself even further away from Montello and Lucin. How can the two cases be connected? You know, is there a serial killer out there kidnapping and murdering young men, travelling, you know, a few hundred miles? It's possible. It's possible. But if we're looking very close to home at Dylan's associates, can they possibly be involved in Aidan's disappearance as well? Given that Aidan was heading away. What, were they chasing him? I don't know, you guys. I don't know. But I don't know why Aidan was out there in the first place, why he travelled there from California in the first place. Was he on some kind of road trip? Was he going to go meet people? We don't know. So for me, there's too many unknowns yet in Aidan's case to say that there could possibly be a connection to his disappearance and Dylan's disappearance. There's just a big distance between them. And the disappearances feel very different to me. But I don't know. It's just weird. All of it's weird. And it appears to be getting weirder. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I've been Michelle. Hope you're well. See you in the next video. Goodbye from Miss Tillington and Miss Cassie Springer, who's in the wheat somewhere. There she is. Bye, guys.